Hello, AP Biology students. This is Mr. MacKay talking to you again. Today we are talking about sex-linked traits for genetics, and I'm starting with our smartboard notes here where we have some examples of sex-linked traits. A sex-linked trait means it's a trait or a gene that's found on the X chromosome. So remember, we have 46 chromosomes. 44 of those 46 are called autosomes. That's chromosomes 1 through 22, or the pairs 1 through 22. The 23rd pair are your sex chromosomes. Females have two X's, males have an X and a Y. We're mostly talking about traits found on the X chromosome. Here are some examples that you would want to know and remember. Colorblindness is a sex-linked trait. Hemophilia is a sex-linked trait. A few other examples listed on this card: muscular dystrophy, gout, vitamin D resistant rickets, and SIDS, bubble boy, you can look that one up, are also sex-linked traits. The question would generally give you some kind of a hint that you're dealing with a sex-linked condition. Other than hemophilia and colorblindness, you should probably remember those ones. But generally the question will say, here's a trait found on the 23rd pair, or here's a trait found on the X chromosome. So how do we work these through? When you're doing problems with sex-linked traits, you must include the sex chromosomes and write your alleles only on the sex chromosomes using a superscript number. So I'm using the example of colorblindness here. A colorblind man would be X lowercase n because it's a recessive sex-linked trait, while a colorblind woman would be X little n, two little n's there. What would the genotype be for a normal vision woman whose dad had been colorblind? So a normal vision woman, let's start with their sex chromosomes. Females have two X's. If she's normal visioned, that means she must have the dominant allele on one of the X's, a capital N. But if her dad was colorblind, she must have inherited the recessive allele on the other X from dad. This woman is said to be a carrier. Can you have a man who's a carrier for an X-linked trait? No. The definition of a carrier is somebody who does not have the disease but carries the allele for the disease. So this woman carries the allele for colorblindness. A man, if he had the allele for colorblindness, would be colorblind, means he has the disease. When you form gametes for the sex-linked traits, remember that the allele stays on the sex chromosome. Thus, the gametes for a man, X little n y, the gametes that man would form when you're doing a Punnett square, that's one gamete, that's the other gamete. X little n is one, and the y is the other. Form the gametes for a woman who's a carrier for the hemophilia gene. We already had the carrier female. This was the carrier female here. So if we are doing a Punnett square where we're fertilizing her eggs with sperm, one of the potential alleles is X big N. The other potential allele would be X little n. Let's go to the next card. In fruit flies, no gene for eye color is carried on the Y chromosome, only on the X. That tells us it's a sex-linked trait. The red eye gene is dominant to the white. Just like a normal Punnett square, you have to first come up with a legend. So they're carried on the X. Red eye is dominant to white, so X big R would be red. X little r would represent white eyes. There's our legend. You don't have to show the Y on your legend. What color of eyes would the offspring of white-eyed female have? Sorry, let me just change cards here. Let's go with this. What color of eyes would the offspring of a white-eyed female, so if she's a white-eyed female, little r, crossed with a red male, X big R, Y. There's my cross. Let's figure out the gametes. Pretty easy. There's only one potential gamete for females. Usually with sex-linked traits, we still write them both out. We didn't do that with autosomes. Just easier here. Punnett square. We've got X big R, X little r. The big R is the dominant one's always written first. X little r, Y. The X is always written first in front of the Y. Again, X big R, X little r, Y. Usually now we have to give a phenotypic ratio. And the phenotypic ratios for these can be written in two different formats. I can do the ratio for the whole entire Punnett square. So I could say 2/4 of the whole Punnett square are females with red eyes. and 2/4 are males with white eyes. Or another way to show this Punnett square is I could just deal with the sexes. So another phenotypic ratio. Oh, what happened there? Another phenotypic ratio I could show is just say males. Of the males, 2 out of 2 are white-eyed. And for the females, 2 out of 2 are red eyes. Either of these two ways of doing phenotypic ratios for sex-linked traits is okay. Let me go back. The second question, why are males at a disadvantage when it comes to sex-linked traits? Real easy. For a female to have a sex-linked trait, she has to have 2 copies of the recessive allele. For a male to have a sex-linked trait, he only needs to have 1 copy of that recessive allele. Therefore, males have sex-linked traits way, way more often than females. Let's progress through these cards. You have a few questions that I want you to try with the answer keys are given. Try those on your own before you look too much at the answer keys. I am going to have a worksheet coming out in the next couple of days with brand new sex-linked trait questions that you're going to have to do Punnett squares and submit your answers to me. A few more, questions here. X-linked dominant traits, much more rare, but there is a few, like vitamin D resistant rickets. Severe bowing of the limbs is a dominant trait. So what are the phenotypes of the following parents is the question given here. This is a female with rickets. And I know she's with rickets because she has the dominant capital D there. This would be a male who is normal or no rickets because he does not have a capital D on his X. Cross them and give the phenotypic ratios of their kids. Okay, let's cross these two. So we have an X big D, X little d, crossed with X little d, Y. Make our Punnett square. And again, 2 different formats. I personally like this format better where I say, let's start with the females. Of the females, 1 out of 2 has rickets. 1 of 2, normal or no rickets. Of the males, 1 out of 2 has rickets. And 1 out of 2, normal or no rickets. Next couple of cards you can read over, get information on your own. Then the last thing, very rare will this come up as a question on test, but there is such a thing as a Y-linked trait, which means a trait only found on the Y chromosome. So the gene for this trait's only carried on the Y. Why can't girls ever get it? Hopefully this is pretty easy. Girls can't get it because they don't have a Y chromosome. They just have 2 X's, so they cannot get a Y-linked trait. Hairy ears, an example of a Y-linked trait. If this man has 3 sons and 2 daughters, what would their genotypes be? All 3 sons would have to have that. Whoops, sorry, that's wrong. All 3 sons would have to have it, and it's carried on the Y, so whatever, hairy ears. And all 3 daughters don't have any Ys, so they don't have it. By the way, because it only takes 1 allele, it's really the presence of that allele gives it to them. It doesn't matter if it's a capital H or a lowercase h. If they have that allele, they have, in this case, hairy ears. I think that's the rest. The rest is just notes that you can read through on your own, and then that takes us to the next unit. Hopefully that all makes sense. Again, if you have any questions about sex-linked traits, please email me them. I will give you a practice worksheet on this in the next day or so. Talk to you later. Bye.